Today we're going to go over the basics of creating a foam puppet. So this is going to be a fairly basic form, but you can adapt it and add all sorts of things to make it more fanciful and fun. So there's a variety of characters you can do, from people to animals. The one that I'm going to show you, the base, is really good for people, but you could make some changes to it to create an animal. So we're going to first need some scrap paper to build the form first, and then that will become the pattern that we'll use on foam, so we don't waste any foam. And if you can do it in paper, then you can do it in foam fairly easily. But the foam tends to be fairly expensive, so it's important to not waste our supplies. So my students will always start out with a sketch, and then we start to dive in and create the character. So first thing you'll need is that scrap paper, and I would take a sheet, fold it in half, and then fold it in half again. And this is 12 by 18 paper. Don't use anything expensive. And this gives me sort of a center line. And I'm going to be working on the folded edge here, and we don't play with the open edge. First thing we need to do is make sure that our puppet will be the size of our hand. So we've got this line sort of going through the middle, and I'm going to be left-handed for this puppet because I'm normally a right-handed person, but I need that to operate the hands, so it's almost like operating chopsticks. So I'm going to use my left hand for the puppet. You can switch this up, but it is going to be a right or left-handed puppet. So I'm going to put my hand on top so that my middle space here is along that line, and I'm going to go ahead and just roughly trace this. Flip it over, and you want to tuck the thumb in because you don't operate a puppet this way, you operate it, like this. So I line it back up, and then I'm going to go ahead and just sort of roughly trace the thumb. All right. So this gives us our beginning, and then what we take to do is fold this in half backwards. And if we were centered, then these two edges will line up with each other. And what we need to do is create an arch that's a little larger than our fingers to work with. So I can go out, let's say, an inch or two out this way. It's a puppet, so if it's a little off, it's not going to matter. Then I'm going to go another inch or two wide. So I've created this sort of arch like this, and then this will become the basis of the puppet. And when you open it and close it, that's going to be the beginning part of it. So the next thing I need to do is have this attached to my hand. So we have this scrap, so let's use our scraps. And we'll just cut off a strip. And the first thing I want to do is put a piece of tape on the edge of my hand, and we want it to be on the folded edge. Okay, so I am paying attention to that. So I'm going to start it here, put on a piece of tape. I'm going to put in my hand here and figure out how much do I need going over. And I can pinch the paper, cut that off, and then I can go ahead and tape this to the other side of my hand. And I'm going to turn it over and do the same thing. So if I have my thumb in here, how much paper do I need? Well, go ahead and tape a bit of it to the side of your thumb. Put your thumb back in, fold it over, and then you can see with a pinch how long you need to go over your thumb. All of this paper will be translated into foam later. And that's the reason I'm using blue tape, is because at some point I've got to take all of this off. Okay? And now I have the beginnings of my puppet. So now we need to cover all of this. And the best way to do that is you're going to get another piece of paper, same size, fold it in half twice. And then we're going to slide that inside, I call it the taco for the mouth, and I'm lining up the center as best I can. Now for this part, I'm going to want to create an arch that's the same length as the hand that's already there, but I want to go wider. The wider it goes, the taller the head will be. And I'm kind of limited to here, so I'm going to go ahead and do something along those lines. Doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to go ahead, fold this in half, and cut this. Save my scraps in case I need them. And then this fits inside of your taco mouth. All right, so now we have to attach this, but we want one half for the top and one half for the bottom. So we'll go ahead and cut this in half. And while students are waiting, they should be cutting little pieces of blue tape to stitch this all together. So the trick to doing arches on arches that are different sizes is you do the top middle first. So here's the top middle and here's the top middle. So I'm going to go ahead and put those two together and use a little bit of blue tape on that edge and just fold that over. And then I'm going to work my way over little by little, adding extra piece of blue tape so I'm matching the two edges. And you'll see how the paper starts to puff up. And I want to go all the way to what I would call the corner of the mouth. And then I work on the other way. So I match up the two sides. Tape. And tape. And tape. And I've got one more to go to the corner of the mouth. And you can see how this starts to puff up and make the top of the head. And then we repeat that process on the bottom. And when we do, we should end up with something like this. So now I can have my hand in there and we have a puppet. And you can use the scraps to add things like eyebrows, noses. You can set aside some googly eyes to be attaching there, or ping pong balls, or you can just paint onto the surface. Any of those things will work. Now, once you are happy with your puppet base, then you can go ahead and get your foam. And you're going to take apart your puppet and put all of the pieces onto the foam. And you'll be tempted to use a permanent marker to trace these, but I would suggest maybe using a magic marker, something that can come off fairly easily. Because when you paint these, if you use permanent marker, it tends to show through the puppets, and people are less happy with that. But you do need to label your parts. So this one was the bottom jaw. Okay, thumb. And we got fingers. Okay, the taco, I just call it the taco, the mouth taco, is fairly easy to remember because it's the only one that's going to be an oval. So we can go ahead and put that on there. And then you've got the top or face. And then anything that you have in the way of fingers or hands. Now I have my students just kind of trace their hand, and that will work to make a puppet hand. And then you put these as close together as you can so you don't waste any material. So let's take a look at the puppet that we have as an example. So if I go back to this paper puppet, something else you might want to do before you continue on is you'll notice that the arches go beyond the corners of the mouth. So you can actually take that and before you disassemble it, go ahead and cut that to the top of the head. And that way you get a cleaner look with the puppets if you would like to do that. It's kind of optional, but it just kind of cleans it up. All right. So let's look at my puppet here. And you can see the rounded part of the top. We did some ears. They were like a D shape, and we cut a little V out of it and joined it together. This puppet was put together using Master Quick Drying All-Purpose Cement. This stuff is has a lot of fumes, and I put a spout on top of it so that I could fill up some old Elmer's rubber cement bottles, and I crossed off the Elmer's so we know that it's something different. And we did our gluing outside because it can be, pretty smelly. Now for creating bodies, I made a paper template of a tee, like a t-shirt, and we took fabric and folded it, and this was the folded edge. And I have a little cutout for a thumb and fingers, and then under the arms. And you can see, here's the fabric. And then the idea is that you can put your hands through this way, and then you can hold on to your puppet from the back and then operate the hands. When we trace our hands, you want to put in the sticks in the hand opposite the thumb, so thumbs up. And then this is, how the puppet is operated. And it's kind of like operating chopsticks, so it takes a little bit of practice. And then the hand is in the inside. Now, if you don't happen to have fabric to make these, and I actually brought in a sewing machine and we just sewed in the underarms, and we made a little bit of a ribbon in here to strengthen the space between the thumb and the fingers. You could also use children's clothing. So here, for example, is a little baby shirt, and we put a little stitch right in the neck. We hand stitch that so that the hand can go up, and then you can do the same thing and attach the hands with glue onto the end of the shirt. This is a very quick and simple way to go, but sometimes baby clothes are not available. You could use a small child shirt, that would work. And I've seen this done with adult shirts. It's fine, it's a little floppy, but that works. So you could pull all this stuff together to create your puppets. We used spray paint as a base coat, some white spray paint primer, and then we did acrylic that was watered down. So it's about half and half acrylic and water and a stiff brush to kind of rub in the paint into the fabric. The hair was done just with yarn, and we would like chain it together or tie it together in a string of short pieces. You can do pom-poms and just kind of glue them on. There are different ways to kind of achieve that. The eyebrows are half of a fluffy feather glued on very carefully onto the edges. But all of these are kind of optional. You can make it work with whatever it is you have. The nose was a teardrop shape that was pinched twice and then stuck onto the face. So if you'd like some more information and my detailed post on making these puppets, go ahead and look at the description below, and that will take you to my blog post at artedguru.com.